Howdy, partners. Yep, this is Dumb Jock, and I'm excited to have this guest with us today. This is a guest. He's a friend of mine. He's been in the broadcasting business for a long time. I don't know why I'm talking to like this. I think I do that because he's from Chicago, and I get all excited to talk like that. But we talk a lot about the Broncos. We talk a lot about professional football. Today we're going to talk about CU football and the CU Buffs, who are on a tear right now. They're 7-2. They're kicking butt, and nobody knows more about the Buffs. Nobody follows them closer. Nobody goes inside the huddle, so to speak, better and more effectively than my friend Matt Smith, who joins us today. Matt, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, buddy. Inside the huddle. I think Coach Prime might throw me right out of the field.
Well, I mean,
the hell are you doing in here?
You're pretty darn close.
Oh, no, I get that. You just can't get too close. The fire's hot.
The fire is hot. And you know, Coach Prime, you mentioned Coach Prime. He's galvanized the program, the city, the state, the college football world. Nobody expected them to be where they are right now at 7-2, right? I'm just going to a brief synopsis. Last year, they win their first 3 games.
Yep.
Then they drop 7 of 8. Or something like that.
Yeah, 8 out of their last 9, I want to say.
8 out of their last 9 even, and ended up 4-8.
Yeah.
And, you know, TCU was like the high point of the season almost, right?
Yep.
And then it was kind of downhill from there. And going into this season, a lot of pundits assumed the same thing was going to happen. Or at least they weren't going to show this type of improvement that they have.
Yeah.
The Buffs now are in position to go on a run and maybe is it possible, win the national championship. Before we get into that possibility, how did they improve so fast and turn into the type of football team they are now, Matt?
Well, I think they learned a lot from last year. Number one, you had a lot of guys who came in the transfer portal, and you have to remember when Coach Prime took the job, it was like early December, but he stayed in Jackson to coach the Celebration Bowl as to not leave everybody high and dry. And his choice to do that hampered them a little bit in recruiting because he didn't have as much time to get a jump start on that year's class that he would have if he had just taken the job and moved everybody out in December and gotten rolling like that. So instead, I think they kind of got off to a bit of a slow start. They were able to get some positions last year, but in the trenches, they were woefully short last year. Everybody and their mother could see that.
Yep.
And they learned a lot. And coaching staff-wise, right? Remember Sean Lewis, who was their offensive coordinator?
Yep. Got
demoted mid-year. Pat Shermer got promoted to co-OC and play caller mid-year, and then he went and he pretty much dumped the staff. He dumped a lot of the roster again. There were 46 new transfers, and this time you were adding those guys to the players that had already worked out last year, the guys who you could tell could play at this level and were going to be a part of your program's identity. Now you went and you got, instead of like Power 5 backups, like the guy sitting next to the water boy at Alabama, no, you got like, maybe the number 2 D tackle at Alabama heading into this year, Anquin Barnes. He comes and plays, and he's been really effective. As an example. But then I think a lot of it, obviously, talent has a lot to do with it. Will Shepard, who's made a bunch of plays at receiver, he had over 2,000 career yards and over 20 career touchdowns in the SEC, right? Like even at Vanderbilt.
Where did he play?
At Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
In a bad offense, you can produce those kind of numbers. You can play a little bit now,
yeah.
And so he's a part of, in my opinion, what is, if not the best, one of the best receiving corps in the country. And so you add all the talent on the field, and I think you kind of have to get guys that are more committed, maybe guys who originally thought, yeah, this will be great. My name's going to blow up. I'm going to be popular. You kind of get them out of the program, and you replace them with some guys who are more in line with what you want to do on the field. And all that other stuff, the notoriety, the cameras, the clicks, all that stuff comes with it. But this is about football. And I think a lot of this year was about getting back to the basics. And so when Coach Prime this offseason went and gutted his coaching staff, essentially some guys left. He didn't gut it. Some guys left, so he had to replace some pieces.
My old coach, Tim Brewster, left.
He did. He went to Charlotte. Good old Coach Brew.
Do you know did he get fired, or did he
No, he left. He left on his own volition. I actually don't think I don't know that anybody got fired. I think a lot of guys took other jobs because Sean Lewis went to be the head coach at San Diego State, who was their offensive coordinator. You had Charles Kelly go be the co-DC at Auburn, his alma mater.
Yep.
And so they had to replace the coordinators, and then their defensive line coach, health reasons. They bring in Coach Sapp. They bring in Coach Damian Lewis, who also played in the NFL for a very long time, who probably doesn't get talked about enough.
Running back?
No, D-line.
Okay.
Damione Lewis.
Oh, okay.
Damione. Damion
Okay.
Lewis. Anyway, so, he's actually their D-line coach. Sapp is just a, kind of an assistant.
Yeah.
So you've restructured that, but it starts, in my opinion, with the guy that he picked for defensive coordinator. I believe he was waiting for Mike Zimmer. And if you'll remember the NFL coaching cycle last year, Dan Quinn was being talked about in several places, and then it kind of got narrowed down to Washington at the end. Well, Quinn takes the job from being Dallas's defensive coordinator as Washington's head coach, and then Zimmer gets the Dallas DC job, at which point Coach Prime pivoted to Robert Livingston, who had spent the last 9 years as a safeties coach in Cincinnati with the Bengals, and he's been fantastic.
Quite a risk, right, for Coach Prime?
Huge risk.
Especially when you're waiting on a guy like Mike Zimmer. You bring in Pat Shurmur on the other side, tons of pro experience, and then you go with an unproven NFL assistant.
100%. I mean, you're talking about a year where you need to win now.
Yeah.
You're going to bring in a guy who's a first-time play caller?
Yeah.
Really? Like, that's a big gamble. Not to mention he did the same thing with the offensive line. Phil Lodeholt came in, and he was his biggest title was a grad assistant at Oklahoma. Now he played in the league for, I think it was 7 years, offensive line for the Vikings. But you bring him in, he's never, quote unquote, held that position before, and he's done a really good job with that offensive line so far. So you've got a lot of first-timers, and I think what Coach Prime did is he nailed the like-minded nature in his hiring. Like, you've got a very cohesive group. There's good camaraderie. There's really no infighting, and not to mention, we go back to the talent. Yeah, you have talent, but you also have experience. Guys who have played a lot of snaps at other places. Like I said, kind of going back to the Alabama comparison, instead of the guy sitting next to the water boy, no, you got a guy who's played some snaps in the SEC now who you're bringing in. Higher caliber player, in my opinion. You know more about what you want in your coaching staff, and it starts there for their turnaround. And then, the key is obviously Ben, Shedeur, and Travis, because those two, in my opinion, are the two best in the country.
Woo.
And when you surround everybody, you surround those guys with players like they have, you can do some special things.
Okay, so you think Shedeur is the best quarterback in the country?
Yeah, not even close.
Not even close.
Not even close.
You did just mention, though, that he has the best receiving core in the country.
Sure.
Playing against perhaps not great opponents, great defenses from time to time. Do you think there's a knock at all, or at least GMs in the league, when evaluating Shedeur, take that into account? Like a Bryce Young, for example, right? Who absolutely crushed it at Alabama because everyone on his team was better than everyone else. And then he gets to the league and has struggles. Do you think Shedeur's excellence has to do with the excellence around him, or is he just that good?
I think it's a good question. And I think for that answer, you kind of have to look at last year. He was the most sacked quarterback in the country, the most pressured quarterback in the country, and he still threw for over 3,200 yards, 27 touchdowns, 3 interceptions with a 70% completion percentage.
3 interceptions last year.
3
Wow.
interceptions, that's it. I mean, he's got more this year.
Yeah.
So I would say not really, because I think he's making guys better too. Now, obviously, the proof will be in the pudding when he gets to the next level. But I'll tell you this, as I've said since last year, I'm as high on Shedeur as a quarterback prospect as I've seen in a minute. The guy has it between the ears. Coach Prime has built him up. Maybe there's a knock on him because people see the flash, they see the watch, they see all that stuff, and they go, that must be who you are. But it's not. In fact, I was actually, when we were down in Tucson for the Arizona game, I was talking to a scout for I'll just leave it at NFC team. He was a Western scout for an NFC team, and he was asking me about Shedeur. And when he asked me about Shedeur, I instantly got goosebumps because I said, look, you can't fake that. I can't fake that because that's how much I believe in him. Maybe it doesn't end up being true, but he's got the mechanics to me where I believe he's going to be a better pro than a college quarterback because he will be surrounded with other guys like that in an NFL system with NFL coaching. And I mean, we also have to understand this will be the first time he gets to branch out on his own. And he won't be around his father anymore, which maybe that'll provide some challenges, but also could provide an opportunity for growth because someone else with a different set of eyes will be kind of right there with him. But you look at him, I mean, look at his mentorship, Tom Brady and, the best of the best have helped him out. But he also, you have to understand his quarterback coach, his private quarterback coach, also is a quarterback coach for Cam Ward at Miami. He might have the 2 best quarterbacks in the country in that program, and Kyron Drones at Virginia Tech, who's also very good. So he's getting the best of the best tutelage. And man, I tell you, he's a hell of a leader, and he's a really good teammate. All that stuff, all those, bogus rumors that came out in the offseason, all that stuff is unfounded, or it's coming from players who transferred out of the
Right.
program because they couldn't make it.
Right.
And I don't mean to sound harsh there, but if you look at the portal, guess where they still are? They're still in the portal, and it's for a reason.
Oh, the guys who were talking crap didn't end up anywhere?
Pretty much.
So, man, a lot to unpack there. So I think that, okay, so we've heard the rumor lately that maybe Coach Prime goes and coaches the Dallas Cowboys and brings Shedeur with him. You just said that he's going to be off on his own without Dad for the first time. Is there a chance that they're trying to make it a package deal and he wants to play with his father somewhere, or is he ready to go off and be on his own? And conversely, do you think Coach Prime is sort of looking forward to being able to coach without, not the burden, but the sort of unusual pressure that comes with having the quarterback be your son?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, Coach Prime has always been consistent in that he doesn't want to be in the NFL because he feels like he would struggle to deal with guys who didn't respect the game as much as he did and made a lot more money than he did when he was playing. And he's been very consistent with that. And I actually believe him because I don't think his style, his stuff, like the rah-rah stuff, I don't know that it would work at that level like it works in college, number one. And not to mention, there's a lot of politics behind it. You have to answer to a lot of people. And I don't know that he's all that interested at this point in his life in answering to a lot of people. In Boulder, he is judge, jury, and executioner.
Yeah.
And so whatever he says goes.
Does he like walk around campus over there at
Yeah.
all? Like,
Oh, yeah. He walks around every day.
Like the part, like the seas part, like it's Moses. Like, is he just God there?
Yeah, it's not quite like that because I think in Boulder, people are pretty respectful of like giving you your space. Nobody wants to hound you, but he is Deion Sanders.
Yeah.
It's impossible to ignore that level of fame. That's another part of this that I don't think I really understood until I was around him close to every day. Being 90s famous, like being that level of famous where people only saw you on television, heard about you on the radio or in newspapers, there was a mystique to you. You weren't constantly inundated with social media.
So like
What's this guy
Jake Paul
eating?
or something.
That's what I'm saying. It's like there's a mystery to you and there's an allure, and I've seen people, the reaction to him is impressive, but people are very respectful. To go back to your question about, the NFL, look, I mean, I know Stephen A. wants Coach Prime in the NFL because the NFL product right now is not that great and there's not a ton of interesting storylines to talk about.
You don't think the NFL product is great?
Not right now.
Why?
Not right now. Scoring's down. I would say that quarterback play by and large is not maybe what we saw the previous 10, 15 years,
it's not.
20 maybe even. So,
But isn't that a pretty good storyline? Like, why is that happening? Like, what is
not
what
for
are
the casual fan?
You don't think?
Not for the casual
ratings
fan.
are pretty good, aren't they?
They're always going to be good. The NFL's king.
Yeah.
But I just don't think the product is as good as it's been. And this is coming from a guy who's been sits down at 11 a.m. and watches 7 hours of commercial-free football plus Sunday night and doing fantasy. I'm gambling, so I love the NFL. But for me, it's just not what it was. And not to mention, Deion gets you numbers.
Yeah.
And when you put Deion and the Cowboys together, the Cowboys get you numbers. Deion gets you numbers.
Yeah.
Stephen A. would love that because you could talk about that a lot more, and I understand that from their perspective. I mean, you tell me, what is the number one NFL storyline going on right now? Is it more interesting than a potential Deion to the Cowboys?
No.
So I think that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, what is the number one storyline in the NFL right now? The Chiefs are undefeated
and aren't playing well.
Yeah.
I mean, just saying, like they shouldn't have won
Aaron
last week.
Rodgers is shitty. That's a fun one.
Oh, can we swear on here? Is that Dumb Jock?
Yeah, we can.
Fuck yeah, man. My point is that it's just not what it's been in the past.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that's a legitimate option for either Coach Prime or Shedeur Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that being said, the scout did have questions about, and I've talked to multiple, and this isn't just from one guy, I've heard it, but they do have questions about the Flash and this and that.
Oh, yeah.
So
as they should.
And he is going to
because it is unusual, isn't Shedeur the highest paid NIL player in the country?
He is the first athlete to have an NIL deal with Nike.
And he makes how much per year?
A lot.
4
Upwards
million,
of five.
right?
Upwards
five,
of five,
right?
yeah.
And so he's on a team with kids who aren't making anything, right? Like, not everyone makes money on a
No.
on a
Well,
roster.
they're making some, but they're not making what he's making.
Right, and so the disparity between the richest on a college team, especially the richest in the country, like Shedeur, and the rest of the guys, is so wide that you'd want to know that he is not using that to his advantage or or creating a feeling where it's the haves and the have-nots on a team.
Oh, yeah, that's
because there's
not
some
it.
guys,
Yeah.
like in the NFL, everyone's making enough money to live comfortably, right? But in college teams where one guy's making $5 million and then 30% of the guys aren't making really anything,
Yeah.
there could be some divisiveness that is sown within the locker room unless that guy is a good leader and doesn't act like that in front of the guys who aren't making money.
Right. That's the only time he's like that is on the field.
Okay.
And I think that's the only time a lot of people see him. So
of course.
So that would be what you would think. Johnny Manziel doing the throat slash, doing that.
Right.
That's what people saw about him, right? And so the thing about Shedeur is you just don't hear any negative words about him from teammates. And it's not insincere. Like Coach Prime the other day told a story about how there was a young man who jumped in the transfer portal after last season who Shedeur went and bought all brand new furniture. And then the kid went and dipped, didn't say thank you. Shedeur bought him thousands of dollars worth of furniture because he wanted to help him out. Omarion Miller, great example. Another younger wide receiver. He came into that, oh, God, I can't even remember which game it was at this stage now. It was early in the season. I want to say Baylor in the second half. It had almost 200 yards and then got hurt in the second half. Well, Shedeur didn't have to involve Omarion in a lot of different things, but there's been instances where he's brought him into press conferences and corrected people when they said his name wrong. And he's a considerate person, but you also have to understand if you're committing to Colorado, what you're getting. If you're coming to Colorado and you're jealous of Shadeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, Colorado's probably not the place for you. It's just not. Like, in this world, we can't always apologize because certain people have, gifts or their last name or different blessings bestowed upon them. You can't compare and contrast. And if you do too much, which I think we've seen in the past, you're going to be out of the program because you probably won't be able to hack it there. And we've seen that. And I think you see a lot of guys who kind of left, feel slighted because
the attention.
A little bit but it's born out of the fact that they're not really ready for this level, and some other guys are. I don't think money has anything to do with it, if I'm being honest.
What about the favor that Shedeur and Travis clearly get from Coach Prime? Because, there is that, right? If your son is the quarterback, and he's also possibly the best quarterback in the country and maybe a top 5 pick and the first quarterback off the board, maybe he's the first pick overall, don't you have to work hard to create a sense on your team that everyone is equal and it's about us being a team and that it's about the merit and the things you do on the practice field? Like, for example, you run the risk as a head coach when when your son is in that position of creating the impression that the things you do are to benefit him and his trajectory and not necessarily the team. The things you do are to support the Heisman hopes. And I'm not saying this is happening. I'm saying this is a risk when you're the dad and then, those two guys you mentioned, you said it is all about Travis and Shedeur, right? And you got to accept that coming there, that it is going to be them getting the attention. But football is not supposed to be like that. Like the locker rooms I was in, we knew there was the guys who made the most money and were the stars. But in the locker room, like you were saying about Shedeur, we're all the same, and we respect each other because of what the work we put in every day. And no one gets special treatment from the coach because of the work we all put in. The standard was the same for everyone. Like Mike Shanahan would dog cuss anyone on the team if they weren't living up to the standard. Yeah. My question to you, would Coach Prime make an example of Shedeur by calling him out for underperforming?
Oh, I can pull up video right now and show you. You say that, and I don't know if they're really getting special treatment. It's not like they're riding a different bus. It's not.
I'm not saying like that kind of thing. I'm just saying like, the chatter is about them being Heisman hopefuls, right?
Oh yeah, they're the best players in the country.
Yeah, and your dad's the coach. It's hard. It's just it's an unusual situation.
Yeah.
Has this ever existed in the history of college football?
Probably not to this level.
Right, and so I'm just saying these are unusual pressures. Yeah. And football is such a traditional type of game where and part of the reason why there were so many skeptics towards Coach Prime was because it's not what they're used to. Yeah. Right. The Paul Feinbaums or whatever. It's not what I'm used to.
Yeah.
You're doing something different than I'm used to seeing it. And so that's why people didn't believe. Right?
Yeah.
But now they do because the product is showing it. All I'm saying is, it's a tough challenge for Coach Prime to be able to balance that.
Sure. And I think that if it were a situation where it was clear that Coach Prime didn't care about anybody else, or if there was actual special treatment going on, then yeah, I think you'd see some envy and some jealousy. And I'm sure probably because of human nature, that stuff exists, at a minor level. But I'll tell you this, the team is bought in not because of Shedeur and Travis. They're the main components of it, but they're bought in because it's Coach Prime and the team. The one narrative out there that exists about him that I think I take the most umbrage with is that he only cares about them. This is a man who deeply cares about anybody in his circle. That's what I've really learned. But you got to be in his circle, and he cares about you. But when you're in there, you're in. And it doesn't matter if it's Shedeur and Travis, or if it's Tyler Brown, who came with him from Jackson State and wasn't, given a waiver last year to play by the NCAA because he had already transferred once. And the reason that he transferred to Jackson State in the first place is because he watched his head coach die of a heart attack in front of him. Well, Coach Prime advocated, he was public about it, and made sure that he put himself out there in support of Tyler so Tyler could play last year. Never ended up getting the waiver, but it didn't change what Coach Prime has, thought about or treated anybody differently, or he didn't then come back this year and forget about him, right? I think he's actually going to be featured in the documentary. So, no, it would be one thing if there were special treatment. But here's the other part of it, and this is something that Coach Prime says all the time. If you can do what they do, you can get some of those benefits too. And that is something that I don't care who you are, you're not going to be able to argue with at this level. If you want to get to the next level and talk about, okay, it's got to be equivalent, well, guess what? It's going to be a completely different landscape. Nobody else is doing what Travis Hunter's doing. Nobody else is doing what Shadeur Sanders is doing. If Travis is going to get Monday and Tuesday off of practice, which is how it works for him because he plays so many snaps, well, you go play 200 snaps and play to that level, and then maybe you can have Monday and Tuesday off too. So I think it's all about work in this program, truthfully. Coach Prime will play anybody. Good example. The guy who came in and replaced Hank Zelinskas at center on Saturday is a walk-on freshman. True freshman walk-on, never took a snap with the first team. Cash Cleveland came in and played great. If you can play, you can play. And that is one thing
Cash
that
Cleveland's a great name, too.
Great name. And that's one thing I've really respected about Coach.
And it's funny, too, because father or not, superstar athletes get special treatment.
For sure.
I mean, I played D3 football. I was in a D3 football program, and I, walked in late to a Spanish class one time, and, my Spanish teacher said something to me, and I apologized for being late again, and he said, don't worry, Nate. After I saw you catch that touchdown on Saturday, there's no way you're going to fail my class in front of everybody else, right? So they're like, well, screw you, man. I mean, it happens everywhere. You're doing things that make people proud to be at that school, and so you do get a little bit of special
But
treatment.
should that be a disadvantage for Shedeur and Travis?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I'm just throwing out some devil's avocado stuff
Some
at you
avocado,
because these are skepticism charges levied at Coach Prime and some of the. But a lot of it is the fact that they're 7-2 and playing so well. A lot of that has fallen by the wayside. It's a lot of that skepticism, the antagonism, the tension between Coach Prime and the media. It's dissipated because of they're proving it on the field.
Yep.
And it's like my football brain. I'm seeing him, Coach Prime, grow as a coach every week, become a more complete coach, be able to manage the game better, be able to make better in-game decisions, and that's pretty cool to see that. They're 7-2 right now. They got Utah coming up, and 3 more regular season games. Big 12. Lay out I want to know, can the CU Buffs win the national championship, Matt? And if they can, if the CU Buffs can win the national championship, lay out their path. How is it going to go down?
Before, I think we probably all would have laughed because of where they've been as a program. I'm having a harder time laughing now only because whatever game they play, they'll have the best 2 players in the field. And that, I think, does something for you. Now, obviously, when we're talking about going up against the likes of Georgia and Texas and Ohio State and Oregon and some of these programs, it doesn't matter if you got the best quarterback and the best non-quarterback in the country. You got to have a full team of dudes. So that, I don't think we've seen this team tested like that yet, but can they make the college football playoff? Yeah. And if you get in the dance, I think all bets are off. But again, I go back to, even if you're playing a Bama or a Georgia or a Texas, CU will still have the 2 best players on the field. So for me, can they win the national title? I think they got a good chance to get to the college football playoff, and then from there it's all about matchups and, hey, where's the region? Where am I headed? Where are we playing? Can our fans travel? Because here's the other part of it. CU's got a good fan base, but they're no Georgia, they're no Texas, they're no Bama. Those fans travel like crazy, and when you go to neutral site college football games, that plays a big role into it if you can turn those neutral sites into home field advantages. So, I mean, how does the path lay out? You've got Utah this week. You've got to win out. Basically, you control your own destiny for the Big 12. If you win out because Kansas beat Iowa State last week, now you officially control your own destiny. So if you win out, beat Utah, beat Kansas, beat Oklahoma State to end the regular season, you're in the Big 12 title game, which would be a week after the regular season. And if you beat presumably BYU there, then yes, you're onto the college football playoff. And from there, it just all depends. I think they have a team that is capable of winning a game in the college football playoff, though, at least.
You talk about winning games on the road
in
hostile territory. You were there last week in Lubbock. Would you consider that hostile territory?
Yeah, but I think there's different levels to it.
Yeah,
it's maybe not Death Valley at LSU, but it's pretty hostile.
So there was clearly some issues with the refs. Some issues with the fans saying deplorable things.
Yeah.
Should the CU bust because of the national sort of attention that they get, the skepticism of Coach Prime, the assumption that Shedeur is someone that he's not?
Yeah.
Should they expect that type of vitriol wherever they go? And not only that, should they expect the refs to sort of not be on their side?
Yeah, it's a good question. It was definitely something they had to overcome last week. Like, you didn't just have to beat Tech. You had to beat Tech, the crowd, and it felt like, to a degree, the officiating. There were some of the more, as a receiver, tight end yourself, if we went back and watched that film, you'd go, oh, well, that's OPI. Well, that's OPI. I mean, there were some basketball screens. But you got to fight through that stuff. Like, that's another layer of adversity, and they did. They weathered it all, and, they've been getting it every week. They've been getting it every week.
Why do the refs not want CU to win?
I wouldn't say the refs. I've been saying, like, the crowd. Like, they've been getting that every week, for sure. That might be a little bit of a different situation.
They play very passionate, right?
Yeah.
They celebrate even the smallest gains from time to time.
Doesn't every football team?
No.
No?
Not necessarily.
You don't see teams on Sundays getting up after a first down?
You don't think that CU celebrates a little bit more freely than other teams?
Not even a little bit.
See, I think a little bit differently there. And I know, I'm not judging that. What I know are referees.
Yeah.
And they don't like those celebrations.
That is true.
You know what I'm saying? And so the more fun you're having, the more upset they are by that. You score a touchdown, you do a choreographed dance. If they're not throwing it now, they're remembering that.
Sure.
And so if you're Coach Prime on this run at all, do you talk about that with your team? Like the act like you've been their idea? Because, that could, right or wrong, if they have a vendetta against you or don't want you to win, like look at the Chiefs. They want the Chiefs to win. Mm-hmm. The NFL wants Taylor Swift in the suite at the Super Bowl, right? And so they are greasing the skids for that. There's a bias that happens with the zebras, right?
Okay.
And so if you're Coach Prime, and obviously you're trying to win the national championship, right?
Right.
Do you try to tamp down the sort of enthusiasm, not enthusiasm for the game, because you want to play with passion? You get where I'm going here?
Yeah, no,
Do you talk about that with your team? It's hard for Coach Prime to do that because he was like, he's prime time.
Well, you want to be unapologetically yourself.
Right. But there's also rules for policemen.
Yeah, but I mean, again, I guess I just would fundamentally disagree with the premise that they celebrate more than others.
All right.
So I appreciate what you're saying. Yeah. And if that were the case, if they were being derogatory and going up to the sideline and taunting, they're not doing that. I would say that a lot of teams bring them that energy because they know they're on in the national spotlight and there will be eyeballs on them. And when Shedeur said at the beginning of the year, we're everybody's Super Bowl, he wasn't wrong. Mm-hmm. If you look at the way that Texas Tech blew it out last week, they didn't do that for any other team. I was sitting down on the sideline the entire game while you had the 4 speakers right there on CU sideline. They were pumping in crowd noise. They didn't do that for anyone else.
Wow.
Nebraska, they brought back the 98 was it the 98 and the 94? Did they win in 98? I'd have to go back and look. But it was at least the 94 national champion team. That was their big reunion game. Was the CU game. Like, this happens on the road because that's typically your national television game.
Right.
Now, Utah coming in this week, they just played their Super Bowl last week against BYU. So that won't be, and they've beaten CU every year since 2016. So that won't be their Super Bowl. They just lost theirs last week.
Who's favored in this game?
CU, but I think it's 10.5.
10.5?
Oh, yeah.
But they beat them every other year.
Right, but their starting quarterback and his backup is hurt. You know who's starting for him this weekend? Zach Wilson's little brother.
Is that right?
Isaac Wilson, yeah.
Wow.
He already got benched a little bit earlier this year because he wasn't any good, but we'll see how he does in Boulder at 10 a.m. on Saturday.
So a 10-point spread, clear favorite. What do they have to be careful with Utah? Anything?
Well, Utah's, first of all, Kyle Whittingham has been one of the best coaches in college football since he's taken the job at Utah. And, you know, that's always a team that's really physical. And you watch that game last week against BYU. They should have beaten BYU, who's undefeated right now. So Colorado won't be overlooking them or their defensive front. It's all about the pressure that they can generate on the quarterback. I was actually just looking at PFF. I think pass rush, their average, I want to say they're about ranked in about the 70s, you know, per PFF for their pass rush grade this year. Obviously, you know, PFF we take with a grain of salt. No, I understand. But the point is that they're generating pressure because they're sending blitzes.
Yep.
So you've got to be aware of where you're hot. You've got to understand where pressure's coming from. And for Colorado, I think they're at their best with the quick game. So if you can disable some of that by getting the ball out fast, and if they can jump on Utah early, I think that is a Utah team that should be ready to have its will broken. I believe that.
And so you talk about Utah, Kansas, Oklahoma State, Big 12 championship, and then the Heisman ceremony.
Yeah.
Right? And you expect both of those guys, Shedeur and Travis, to be in New York for this?
Travis for sure will. Travis will win it as long as he stays
healthy. You think
healthy.
he'll win it?
Guaranteed.
Whoa, Matt. Guaranteed?
If they win these next 3 games, even if they win 2 out of the next 3, they shouldn't have to win any more for him to win the Heisman. The Heisman should go to the Heisman on the trophy says best player in college football. You seen anybody better?
Well, isn't the Genty dude doing some crazy stuff?
Yeah, I mean he's having a nice season in the Mountain West for running back.
Nice season. But aren't there lots of receivers putting up a lot better numbers? I mean, you know. No?
No, that's
so
the thing.
Is he leading the league?
I think he's top 5 in the country in receiving and
in not yardage. I mean,
including in yardage.
Well,
he's right up there.
His stat line, and what he's doing is incredible. I'm just talking about the Heisman Trophy.
I understand.
Right? I understand what you're saying.
I get it.
Okay, but you're saying he's running away with it easy. He's going to win it no matter what.
I believe so.
Okay.
If they win, I believe so.
If they win.
Yeah, I mean, I think he should win it either way. I'd vote for him either way, but it's also 600 Heisman voters, you know, and that award for the last however many years has typically gone to the best quarterback on the best team. And so Dylan Gabriel, Cam Ward have been in those conversations. I believe Shedeur should be in that conversation.
Why is he not? Because Travis is on his team?
I think that's part of it, and it hurts him a little bit there. But also, he is a Sanders, and I think there is some bias against that.
Against it?
Yeah.
How so?
Well, from the same scouts who are telling me, you know, they're seeing the flash, from traditionalists, from guys maybe a little bit more like yourself who would approach it from an opportunity where you came from a D3 level, you worked your ass off to get every single thing you got, and quite frankly, there have been natural built-in advantages because of who he is.
Right.
And so I think there's a lot of people that, you know, for whatever reason, for their own personal stuff, you know, just because maybe it wasn't the way they went about it, or maybe it wasn't, you know, the way they'd like to see it done, they have a little bit of a bias against it, and everybody's entitled to their own opinion.
So you think Shadeur Sanders, if he was the same kid, same skill set,
if he were playing for Georgia, he'd be there.
Really?
Oh, if they would be undefeated if he were playing for Georgia.
So Travis, let's talk about Travis a little bit and what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
He is playing both ways.
Yeah.
He's playing, you know, how many snaps a game on offense and
many
snaps a game on defense?
He played 170 total against Tech.
Is that all?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
What is
this is what I'm saying.
He's not doing special teams. He's not running down on kickoff.
Well, he did play some special team snaps the other day. He was definitely in on some field goal stuff and field goal block. Yeah. But I mean, he would do whatever. He is as unique a young man as I've ever been around. As good of a person as you'll find. Like, all he does is goes home, hangs out with his fiance in his onesie, and plays video games.
Loser.
He's not part.
Come on,
I mean, it's not what I would have done.
No, why are you not enjoying? Well, I guess if he's engaged, then he's a good. You know, he's a good man. He doesn't.
But that's kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But this is what I'm saying. Like, he's different. He's not. You know how everybody was, you know, Well, let me put
Back
it
in
a
the
different
day.
way. Well, I was just going to say, you know how everybody was lauding Bo Nix for being an older rookie, 24, and he's married, so maybe he could hit the ground running faster.
Yeah.
Look at Travis.
Yeah.
I mean,
How old is Travis?
He's a junior right now, so I think he's
21.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Is he coming? Is he coming back?
No.
Come on, doesn't he need another year to develop?
No, I wish. No. They joke about that with him sometimes. Like, what about 10? 10?
Yeah.
How about 20? But I mean, those are kind of the numbers that are being thrown around.
$1 million to keep him?
Yeah, they were obviously making jokes.
Well, what does he make in NIL?
I think Travis is between 3.5 to 4.5.
And who pays him?
Well, he has NIL deals. And see, now I'm glad you brought it up because a lot of people out there might not understand. NIL money and NIL collective money is different.
Right.
So Travis and Shedeur, if you have NIL money, that means I have a deal with a company.
Yeah.
So we saw Shedeur in Times Square doing the watch, and that is because Nike signed him to be their first college football NIL athlete. Well, now I've got to deal with them. I've got to deal with Gatorade. I got to deal with Mercedes and Louis Vuitton. Many players don't
Some
have
little-known companies.
Little-known companies, right? Travis is the same way with different other companies. I don't remember United, and he's got a bunch of them. And the point is that the fifth left tackle is getting money from the NIL collective, not from an NIL deal. So he'll be getting money from a big pot that's pooled together and then individually distributed. However, yeah, I mean, these guys are making real deal money, which is why Coach Prime a lot of the time brings up how maybe there's bias in the media against them because there's people who are jealous of what they're able to do. I think it's a little ridiculous to blanket it like that personally, but that is absolutely true.
Well, there's always, prior to these last couple of years, there was always this sort of separation between, the paid members of the media who made a living that way and these college kids who don't.
Yeah.
They're amateurs.
Oh, yeah.
And all of a sudden, they're making more than I am. They have more influence than I am.
Way more
than I do.
Yeah.
And they have their own,
podcasts, and they've got, you see when I pull up to the parking lot, there's 3 cyber trucks and a Rolls Royce, and here's, all these cars.
Right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Look, so I wonder whose golden Cybertruck just got booted. Oh, right. I remember Shiloh's got the golden Cybertruck. Like
golden Cybertruck. Yeah. Why did it get booted? Not paying parking tickets?
CU parking is ruthless, man.
Really?
Ruthless. They don't care who you are.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I imagine the guy who's doing the boots is just loves booting those trucks.
I don't think he has any idea.
What?
I really don't.
You don't think he knows that the nicest cars in there?
Why would you boot their cars?
Because they're illegally parked, Matt. Nobody's above the law at CU.
Parked you know what? That is the case for CU parking. That is the case. I've gotten plenty of tickets from CU parking.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is.
It's an institution of higher education,
Coach
Matt.
Prime's Lambo was ticketed last year.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah. It just happens.
What color is his Lambo?
White.
I thought it was white in my mind when I
should have said it. Now no one can believe you.
Well, rewind the tape. Put a thought bubble there. So I want to talk about something with Travis.
Okay.
Because what he's doing is highly unusual. You talked about the 170 snaps, right?
Mm-hmm.
But none of the stats on either side are necessarily remarkable. The statistics as a defensive back, good, but not the best in the country, and neither on.
I just wanted to pull it up to make sure we're on this.
Yeah, could you?
I would.
Because I don't know that to be certain.
I understand.
Sure.
But I mean, he's got 9 receiving touchdowns in 7 games.
Yeah. Well, that's not going to be the leader.
No, I'm just saying he's
nation.
like top 5 in both.
I don't think 9 is going to put him there, Matt. I don't. I really don't. 9 is in 7 games is really good.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're talking about the best receiver in the nation, I don't know if that's going to be the case.
Okay. I'm working on it.
Okay,
but give me your point.
So I'll just keep. So the point I'm making is this, right?
Yeah.
What he's doing is never been done, but on either side of it, neither of them are necessarily remarkable. They're
tied for 6th with 9.
What's that?
Tied for 6th with 9.
Tied for 6th.
Tied for 6th with 9.
Right.
Receiving yards.
What about interceptions?
He's got 2, and he's got 7 pass breakups.
Okay, so that's probably maybe top 20 in the league.
Yeah.
In college football, right?
Yeah. Let me.
So what I'm saying is, like, you see him play, how remarkable he is, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that he's not.
I know.
As great as what he's doing, but what he's doing is it spreading him thin in a way that isn't allowing his maturation at one or the other? And does he risk getting washed out in the NFL and becoming jack of all trades, master of none? Because when you get to that level, they're just that good.
Yeah.
You know, the route running of the receivers is just that good. He is a very raw receiver. If he wants to be a receiver over a DB, for example, his route running will improve, but it would. That's what happens. Every receiver, to an extent, is raw when they get to the NFL. The route running improves for everyone. It's the ball skills that you can't teach, and that he has clearly in spades above everyone else. But what I'm saying is this experiment, this unusual thing he's doing, spreading himself so thin and maybe not setting him up for the next level as effectively as focusing on one might?
I don't think so. I think since you had played in the NFL and had that experience, I think everybody's going to have their own opinion on it. There hasn't really been anybody that I've ever been around before that I would say no to that question. I think everyone that I've personally been around before, I would say yes to that question. Now, could you be the most elite route runner if all he did was play receiver? Probably. Like, he would get better at that because you're just time on task, right? Like, you're just spending a lot more time if you're not doing anything at DB. The guy I watch play every Saturday and have for, 17 games? It's been 21 total, and he was hurt for 4 of them. So the guy I see is the only one that I've ever been around where I believe that maybe not 100% like he's doing it right now, but if you're not playing it both ways in the NFL, you're screwing up. I mean, you're making the wrong call. You are. He's that good.
He is, but you're also, he's valuable to your team. And,
I know.
And these are the best of the best. And, you got to worry about injury. He's been banged up.
What's the worst that can happen?
He gets hurt.
I mean, I hear you, but I mean, can he get hurt just playing one way?
Yeah, of course he can.
And so I think that's kind of my point.
But why? Yeah.
Here's my point: is that Coach Prime and the staff, their training staff, will work with whichever NFL team to give them their regimen. Here's how we've been practicing. Here's how we're going to do this. Now, an NFL team, whatever coach it's going to be, is going to want to do his own thing. Where it gets interesting is if he gets drafted to a team and an organization, same goes for Shedeur, and I guess hypothetically same would go for Shiloh if he gets drafted, that if you're not in a good spot, Coach Prime's going to figure that out privately, and it'll probably not end up being the team you get drafted to. Like, ahead of time, they'll do that. He even talked about that on FS1 the other day about how he's going to, talk to teams privately about it. I understand where your perspective is on it, and I respect it completely.
I just want him to maximize his potential NFL career. That's what
I think it would be foolish for an NFL team not to let him try. I really do. He is the most impressive cardiovascular team sport athlete I've ever been around, and it goes Nathan McKinnon included. Travis went and worked with Olympic sprinting coaches, and he said that, and the sprinting coach said that, I mean, there are Olympic sprinters that Travis is outrunning. I always joke around, there's a great line in Seinfeld where George goes to the gym, takes a shower, comes out, and he's still sweaty. He's like, my shower didn't take. You ever like worked out really hard, got in the shower, and you're still sweaty afterwards? Never happened to Travis.
He just doesn't even sweat.
Like, in the post game, he'll play 170 snaps, come out, and be bone dry, like not breathing hard, not like exhausted. Wow. He's just different. I don't know.
How tall is he?
6'2".
6'2", 190?
Yeah, he's probably about 190. He definitely needs to put on weight.
Yeah. It seems like he did between this year and last year, too.
He put on 15 pounds of muscle.
Okay, so
which is pretty good.
Maybe another 10 to 15.
At least. Yeah. And now I want to be clear. Am I saying that he's going to play 140 snaps in the NFL and he's going to do the exact same thing? No. He should be a full-time corner, and he should be in offensive packages.
Yeah.
Because here's where I'm coming from. There's no team that's taken him first or second overall. If he gets past 2, my jaw would be on the floor, stunned, okay? I mean, that's honestly. He's the best pro prospect I've ever seen in person for any sport. Like, is Travis going to work in the NFL? Yeah, it just depends upon to what degree.
Yeah.
So what I would say is that with him specifically, it'll be like a live and you learn kind of a process, like trial and error. Hey, is this too much? Do we feel like we're going to wear him out too much? And an NFL team might just say, no, you're not doing it.
Yep.
Right? And that might just happen.
Yep.
And they'll go through that. But to not even entertain the idea would be like a fireable offense, in my opinion.
I guess like the what I think about when I think about a guy playing both ways in the NFL, my experience is playing with Champ Bailey.
Yeah.
And he was an every down corner, and we did have a package for Champ.
Well, did you know that Champ, sorry, not to interrupt, but Champ led Georgia in receiving in 98. People compare Travis to Charles Woodson because he won the Heisman. Champ is the better comparison.
Yeah.
So please, I just wanted to put that
I know,
out
and
there.
they asked Champ what he should do, and he said stick to one.
Yep.
Because Champ, it's one thing to just be out on the field in the game doing these things.
Yeah.
But the preparation during the week is the challenge because we spend 4 hours every day in meetings, and so you're with your group.
Right.
And every little bit of learning is like stuff you need to know type of thing.
Yeah.
And so if you're doing both, how do you split up the meeting time? You know what I mean? If you're missing something with your unit, if you're going to that one, right? And so are you going to end up missing something that ends up being more important than you thought it would be, and that ends up costing you a game type of thing?
Yeah.
Those are the things that a coach would have to figure out.
It hasn't yet.
Well, Champ had a package.
Yeah.
And he did come and in our receiver room, and I was playing receiver at the time. I'm like, hey, why don't you throw me those balls, man? Why you bringing Champ in here? I can do that.
Right.
I can run the under route. Throw me the ball. But Champ had to come into our meeting room and go through the installation. Yeah. So he's not in his meeting room with his guys going over the game plan to stop the receiver that he's got to play this week. He's instead learning this package, and that takes some brains power. That takes some studying. That takes some extra film sessions and things like that. And ultimately, we did it for a couple weeks, and then we stopped doing it just because it was like a lot on Champ. It messed up the flow of the meeting time and all that kind of thing. So I would think that the on the field stuff he could handle.
Perspective.
He could handle.
Yeah.
But it's like the preparation and how the coaches get split up and who gets him now and where does he go from here and how does it affect practice flow? Because now we got to stop practice and get him over here. No, Travis, get over here now. No, I'm supposed to have Travis this period.
Right.
That thing.
Yeah.
That will be something they'll have to work out, but they're smart people. They should be able to figure that out. And with a talent like Travis, it would be worth it to figure that out. Okay, one more question for you before we get out of here.
Okay.
All right. Nobody's closer to the program than you. Maybe not in the huddle.
Yeah.
But right
outside the huddle.
Outside the huddle. What's the future of the CU Buffs program? 3-5 years from now, is Coach Prime around?
Don't ask me. 3 to 5. I'll give you next year.
Give me next year.
Next year he's here.
Yeah.
Next year he's here. And I think honestly, Travis and Shedeur are going to move on, and we'll see what happens with Bucky. I think Bucky will have he'll have well-off media set up here. I don't know if he's going to be running it or if he goes and wants to bounce around the NFL and follow those guys. But the future is probably Juju Lewis, who's ESPN 300 just named him the second best quarterback in next year's class. Going with a freshman, which is a big transition. You're going to have some growing pains there if they don't get somebody else from the portal as well at quarterback. But Coach Prime's going to be here. He's not taking like I said, he's not taking an NFL job. And he's not taking another college job because if you go to the SEC, you got to answer to donors and boosters, and he's not doing that. Did you see Mike Elko when he got hired to Texas A&M doing the Aggie dance? It's just like Coach Prime's not going to stand up there and do that. He's not dancing for you, literally and figuratively. And so when I look at his future, if he wants to keep coaching, it'll be here. I think once he leaves here, he's going to be done coaching. I believe that. Florida State burned that bridge with him after they went with Norvell over him. That's out. Auburn did the same. So I think he is pretty comfortable where he's at. What I keep hearing is their NIL money is more and more competitive now. I think they're like top 30 range. And if you can do that, you know who they got coming this weekend? They got the #1 interior offensive lineman in the country, another guard from IMG, which is where Jordan Seaton came from. And IMG's a football little, breeding ground. It's a powerhouse, little preparatory academy down there in Florida.
Yep.
And hey, man, they got another 5-star linebacker who will be in this weekend with them. And what you're going to start to see is a program that had to microwave the first 2 years because they were already kind of that far along. So he went heavy portal. They'll still go heavy portal, but it won't be as much. And if he wants to stay around, then I think this is a team that will perennially be maybe not next year because replacing Shedeur is going to be really hard, even with a highly touted freshman coming in. But this team should be at least middle of the pack or above in the Big 12 and competing for Big 12 titles pretty much every year. I'd be surprised if they weren't in the conversation. It just depends upon their quarterback. I mean, he's getting the talent. He's got the coaches. What else?
Why would you want to leave? Right?
And here's the other part of it. You're not going to have the volatility like you have in the SEC or the Big 10.
Right.
in the Big 12, you got a little bit of an easier path to the title.
Yeah.
Maybe not as an at-large, like SEC in the Big 10, they're going to probably get like 4 teams in a piece. So your only path to the playoff would be winning the Big 12, which exists for Colorado this year. But I see him here, which I didn't think I would say. I did not think. I was a person who really believed he'd be gone after 2. And now I'd be pretty surprised if he was. Maybe that's me buying into it, but he has been very adamant, and everything that he said he's going to do, for the most part, he's done. At this point, for me to go, I know he said it, that would be kind of naive. So for now, I'm just going to go, yeah, I expect to see him in Boulder next year.
He seems happy here.
I think he is.
And he looks so good in the CU gear.
He does.
It's so iconic.
I know.
And why, as you're starting to build this thing and learn like how to do it at this level, why would you want to leave? It's a beautiful place to be. We hope he stays. Matt, we hope you stay around for a while. Where can people find your stuff?
YouTube at Real Matt Smith, Matt with 1 T, doing the independent thing.
1 T is an important part of that equation.
1 T is important. The second is unnecessary. And, on all sorts of social media, and you'll find me around.
That's right. At Real Matt Smith. That's Matt with 1 T on YouTube. He's following the Buffs, and nobody, obviously, if you've listened to this whole podcast, knows more about the CU Buffs. Come back and join us sometime, Matt, would you?
I'd be thrilled to.
It's really great seeing you, buddy. Thanks for joining us. He's Matt Smith. I'm Nate Jackson. This was...
Can I say it? Dumb Jock.
Guerrilla Sports. See you guys next time. Later.